Once upon a time, there was a kid named Andy who loved sailing. Andy read and reread a book about a guy who sailed all the way around the world. He thought, how amazing would that be? Andy grew up to have a great life with some amazing children he wanted to be an example for, and he built a fulfilling career serving others, coaching Olympians and some of the greatest athletes in the world, coaching college students and young entrepreneurs and business people and teachers and fellow coaches. Over the more than 3 decades of Coach Andrew's career, he's had an incredibly positive impact on thousands of lives, all while helping people achieve their dreams. Now, Andrew is embarking on a dream of his own, sailing around the world in the Clipper Round the World race. 42,000 miles, 11 months sailing the globe, sailing into port on 6 of the world's 7 continents. It's the adventure of a lifetime, young Andy's dream manifested by Andrew's ongoing belief and positive mindset. Where in the world is Andrew Moss? Let's find out. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Kay. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. Where are you in the world right now?
Remarkably, I am in Portsmouth, in the southern coast of the UK, sitting in a hotel room. Yes, having moved my belongings out of the sailboat that I've lived in for the last 11 months.
Wow. Wow, wow.
Indeed.
It's interesting that you say that about moving your belongings out of the sailboat that you've been living in for the last 11 months, because I got to thinking about when it used to be time to leave college after a year, and the dorm room that you had decorated and laughed and cried in and lived in was now just a plain old dorm room again. And I don't know, I was wondering how it felt, how this is feel like in this moment. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting example you bring up, because we actually, for the last day and a half or so of this particular race, because it was ended a little earlier than we were expecting. We had about a day and a half or 2 days almost, and we completely decommissioned, which in is the term Clipper uses, but we depersonalized the boat back to the state it had been handed to us in. So we took down all the signs, the posters, the stickers, the quotes, the custom things we added for comfort in the boat. We had to strip it all down, and a lot of it went into bin bags, and the boat feels very different today, than it did back, a couple of days ago. And it feels, there's an emptiness feeling of how the personality that the boat had taken on, and that we had created in it, has been removed, in anticipation of the next visitors who get to use her. And so it was an interesting process. It was interesting to see the boat back in dock, with all the people's gear removed. And the walls bare. A bit of an eerie feeling, to be honest. It was certainly a sense that we had completed something and there was a closure to it, but I'm not sure that emotionally or mentally we're all quite there yet. But the boat is almost there. Tomorrow and the next day probably being the final days as we bring her back to her home port, which is about a 5-minute motor from where we are right now. And remove some of the sails and some of the equipment and give her one good last deep clean. Take all the food to the local food nonprofit group in the town there. So there's work to be done, but I remember that emptying the dorm room feeling, and it's very, very similar, that you feel like, and even when we sold our house, when you take everything down off the walls and the furniture and everything, it's like it's a different feeling space, and the boat certainly has that right now.
Yeah. Wow. And it's interesting that that happened while you were still sailing. Like you were doing that.
Well, yeah, we were motoring over the last couple of days because they had ended the race. But yeah, it was kind of weird to do it before we had reached Portsmouth, but it saved us some work on shore once we got here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am noticing when I look at my notes that I have about literally like 6 ways of asking the same question that I was curious about. So I think maybe we'll go to some of them, maybe we won't. I don't know, but I'd love to hear about the experience that you've been experiencing since we last talked with you. Like when we spoke, the conversation really was around like, what's the feeling of being almost done?
mm,
Now
hmm
you're done. And there was a race. Interesting. So there was a green flash apparently on this leg that Skipper Mike talked about. I don't even know what a green flash is. I'm completely
mm.
fascinated to hear about that. A sail split, it sounds like from top to bottom. Like it was not a smooth race. It had some really, even for just such a short one, right? Like, what's the experience
Mm.
of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a race that seemed to sum up the whole year in so many ways. Well, so when we started out of Scotland, we actually had beautiful, beautiful weather, great winds for the first 12 hours. We had a great start to the race. We were in the top three, very competitive, sailing with some of the boats who were vying to win the overall title. Uh, had the first of many wind holes that the whole fleet had to deal with, which was a bit unusual for, this is the western coast of Scotland, Ireland, and England is sort of renowned for some stormy weather and even in the summertime. But we had a lot of very sort of fair weather and light winds. So we all kind of floated around for about a day. And then managed to get our way through that. And I think we were still in third place coming out of that, which was fantastic. And the fleet kind of separated, and some of the boats got wind earlier and left other boats behind. And so we were in a great position and sailed that way for a couple more days. And then as I'll deal with the sail before the green flash, but
Hmm.
we were in very light winds, maybe 8 knot winds, like 8 mile, 10 mile an hour winds, very light, simple conditions. And we had our biggest spinnaker sail up. Um, and all of these sails have obviously, been used for a year now. And, this one particularly spends days and days under use. And it's one thing to get used and maybe every once in a while pushed beyond the limits of what the sail is capable of, and sometimes we get a small rip that needs to be repaired. So the sail itself has repairs that have been done on it, which are probably stronger than the original sail.
Hmm.
But the sail is made out of a material that's also being affected by the UV and just the conditions of being wet and then out in the sun is just like it's tearing away at the sort of the fabric
Mhm.
itself. And the sail, I was on deck, I was watching our trimmers trimming the sail, and all of a sudden it just kind of split into pieces right in front of us, and it was still
Wow.
hanging from the top of the mast, but the middle of the sail was completely gone.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had to quickly which we're really good at, deal with that, get that sail down, get the second spinnaker we have up, and get it raised. And I think we did that in about 6 or 7 minutes, to be honest. It was amazing because we had a boat right behind us,
Wow.
maybe half a mile behind us. And we had the new spinnaker up. They had just come up beside us. They actually had just about run into us, but they had eventually figured out that we had slowed down because we didn't have our spinnaker up. So we ended up side by side, and that boat was Zhuhai, who ended up in second place in the race.
Mm.
So, at that time they were in fourth. It was sort of third and fourth side by side, us with our new spinnaker up, them with their original. And for the next about half a day to or so, we battled with them, and our new spinnaker was not nearly the most efficient spinnaker for the wind conditions, which were again still quite light, and they still had their bigger, lighter spinnaker. But we were very competitive, and we really fought as hard as we could to keep them. And then during the night, one night on a watch, they just sort of somehow slipped away. I'm not sure if we lost our concentration. I was off watch. We came back up, and we had lost like a couple miles on them, and then it just, I don't know if the mood changed or something changed on the boat, and we just really struggled to stop that from happening with the next group of boats that also still had their biggest spinnakers up behind us. So it just became this process of sort of slowly but surely slipping back and trying to defend our position, one boat at a time, and watching those spots go away. And it was quite frustrating because we had been doing really well, and we were, I thought we were sailing probably one of our better races up until that point. So yeah, I think we ended up eventually being in sort of 8th position. The 9th and 10th and 11th were well back, and we were sailing along. And then we got notified that the race committee had decided that they were going to end the race early, because with all the light winds, we were taking far too long to arrive in the race finish destination, which we needed to be at in time for the final day sort of procession into Portsmouth to happen. So so they gave us a reference point, like a mark that as of a certain time, they would measure the distance that the boats were from that mark. It was a mark that we were already all heading to, so it wasn't like something that they made up. So they said, based on the distance from that mark at this said time, we will determine the finish order. So we weren't able to change our position in the remaining time, but there was still a couple of really interesting battles in the fleet ahead of us for the final standings, which played out such that the Halong Bay boat won the overall title by 1 point over the Perseverance boat, which which was exciting for all of those guys. They fought to the very end just to try to find a way to defend or overcome a boat ahead of them. So it was exciting talking to them after the race about how that was. We just kind of sailed along with like somebody maybe 5 miles ahead of us and 7 or 8 miles behind us, and there wasn't much else to do than enjoy the final day together sailing the race. It was sort of for me, it was a very weird way to end, because it wasn't just ending the race, like the race we were in, it was ending the race, which was because they also canceled the following day's event. Was supposed to be a very short race, but they weren't sure that we would have all the boats there in time. So it became the end of the around the world race, with this sort of time limit and no finish line to go across. So it was, I don't know, for me, it was a little disheartening way to wrap it up. And I know that there was some, Mike and a few others on the boat felt similarly, that, we're racing, some of us are sailing racers, and we'd like to finish the job, much like the previous leg when we were heading into Oban.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but in the end of the day, it wouldn't have made any difference to the overall standings, and probably wouldn't have made any difference if we had raced all the way, because we were sort of holding our own, and there was a big gap between all the boats. So it would have been just another day of sailing very slowly towards Portsmouth. But so that was sort of this race, and a little bit, of the experience we've had for the year, which was just like glimpses of what we're capable of, followed by just like small periods of time where we either equipment or something, or a decision on tactics doesn't play out, and we end up just losing a little ground, and then we end up back in this sort of middle to back of the pack position, which certainly not a place I'm comfortable being, but it's where we've ended up. So yeah, that was the experience. And then the green flash
Before we go to the green flash,
Okay,
because there's
sure.
something that I want. Well, I really want to acknowledge this and just stay here for a moment for that reason. What I'm thinking about is I'm remembering we talked about, I think it was going from Uruguay to Cape Town. We had a conversation right in Cape Town, and you were sharing about the experience of going from being, I think it was the 10th place boat to being the ninth place boat, something like that.
Exactly.
And it was just, I was getting goosebumps when you were just talking because it's almost the mirror opposite of this, right? This is like a complete, not, I'm not saying you're complacent or anybody's doing it, but there's this feeling of like, well, what's the difference? And then it felt like, oh, hell yeah, we're going for this. It's only 10th place to ninth, but screw it, we're going for this and we're going to just give it our all. And is that what was missing? The feeling of just continuing and continuing to fight until it was called, or
You very, very perceptive. Yes. I mean, uh, Mike and I had a conversation over the last few days about the fact about that Cape Town day,
yeah,
um, which came about only because, you know, and I'll say it the way it happened is I said to him, like, I think we can catch those guys,
yeah,
and it would be fun to try, right? And he got excited
yeah,
because somebody wanted to do that. And it reminded me a lot of the conversation about, do we continue on to Oban and finish the race, or do we not? And I was like, of course we do, right? That's what we're out here for. And then the way that, the decision not to happen, and the feeling, the sentiment within the boat about not finishing, I knew, or I thought I knew at that moment, that the boat fundamentally had changed, in terms of a resolve to see it through, no matter what. And that's
mm,
not against anybody on the boat. It's just there's a big difference between that feeling like we're going to fight to get to, like you said, right, to get from 10th to ninth, and we are going to chase that boat down, and we're going to focus, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get by them. It's very different than saying, well, I kind of feel like I'm tired and I'd rather just motor in, like,
mm,
I've had enough.
mm,
And then, there were some signs of life at the start of this last race, that people had, had some time away from the boat in Oban and come back with a resolve. But again, as soon as the cards didn't quite go our way, you started to see that sort of, what's the point? I heard somebody say, I was actually off watch in my bunk, completely unable to sleep.
mm,
And I heard the words, we're too far behind, so what's the point? And it was
oh,
almost, and I got out of my bunk and I put my gear on and I went up onto the other watches deck, and I said, I'm here to help if there's anything I can do. And so, eventually they asked me to do some helming and, help out a bit. So, no, you're right. Something changed, and there's a lot of time between Cape Town and coming down to Portsmouth. And a lot of people have come through the boat who would not have uh, accepted, what happened. But
mm,
there's also, you know, if I observe what's going on the boat, there's an accumulation of fatigue. There's a looking forward to it being over because people's lives are gonna, come back again. There's a lot of stuff going on that makes it, unless you really, really are in the race, like our friends on some of the other boats were, like where every single decision mattered until the very last second that we were given to continue racing. If you don't have that, you really have to find the resolve from within to create the circumstances that keep you focused like that. And for whatever reason, and there's many, it didn't happen. And so, yeah, we finished the race sort of in a glide mode of just letting time tick by and just enjoying the sail. But yeah, it wasn't going to change in a moment. It was a change in mindset, which had started to be sort of whittled away a little bit earlier in the overall race, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, Mindset is everything. That's
Mindset is everything. I should have taken that with me off the wall.
well, and so it's really interesting the way that you say that. I should have taken that with me off the wall. That's in reference to the last time we recorded in Oban, Scotland. For folks who haven't heard that one, Andrew was sitting in this really cool spot that had all kinds of paintings and things on the wall, and one of them was right next to your head, and it said "Mindset is everything" in this really cool painted way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so our one of our kids has some friends over there. They're making recordings and they're playing here at home. And I was sharing with them that I was going to talk to you. And I shared that you had just said this, that you were pretty gutted that you weren't able to help our team perform better.
Mm-hmm.
And 201, they were all like, oh no, he can't take that kind of responsibility. Oh no, like that's not up to him. It's okay. Like in a sort of consoling way, right?
Mm.
But I was curious the feeling like inside of you, like about all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I think that those words, I chose them very carefully because I think that you can take responsibility for what you were able to do to affect change.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually that's what we all need to do.
Yeah.
Whether the change happens to the extent that we wish it would, whether everybody that we're trying to affect change for is ready for it, sure, that's out of our control. But I do wish, I do wish I had been able to find ways to affect more change in more people, or change that made more of a difference, perhaps, in how we performed than I did. Because part of our challenge as a team was that we kept saying that, well, we're not a ninth place team, but the reality was that we were. And so there might have been a complacency to need to change based on this sense that, well, we think we're better than what the numbers and the results say. But the reality is we put ourselves in that position, and whether there was good fortune or misfortune, all the boats had all of that. So no, I think that, look, I think the things that I can be responsible for are my effort, my mindset, my ability to find creative ways to affect the change that I want to make in the world. I felt like, I felt like I showed up at about a 90% capacity through the whole year, in terms of, like, there were very, very few moments where I sat back and just was like, nah, I just needed a break. I got sick a couple times, came out of a hospital, but I was fighting to be there, and I was fighting for us to do as well as I could. And it's been really interesting. In the last day after the race, we just had a team lunch with all of our supporters, and I had a chance for some sort of private conversations with people. I've heard from people. People have written me beautiful messages and, thank you cards and stuff. But you don't really know how your effort is being received, or the impact that it is making.
Yeah.
But I stand by those words. I mean, it's I was saying to somebody when I used to coach swimming, when things went really well, it always felt like, well, of course they did. Like we prepared for it, right? Like, this happened the way we envisioned it was going to happen. And when it didn't go well, you had to kind of reflect on why not, and what did we miss, and what and I think that's the only way you can grow, is by taking the responsibility for your role in an outcome, whether it's a positive outcome or a negative one. And so, no, I'm comfortable having this mix of feelings about the whole experience. Like, I think there's a lot of people that, and your son's and his friend's response is very typical, is people just want to roll it all up into one amazing experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable, because I think part of why I did this was there's a personal growth of trying something that I didn't know if I could do. I didn't know how well I would be able to handle it. I didn't know what kind of impact I could make. Like there's so much of that was just curiosity. And now I can reflect and say, yeah, like if I signed up again and did it again, I would try to find new ways and different ways and more ways to help more people. But there's been like, I mean, at lunch today, one of the probably the most experienced sailor on the boat was a 72-year-old gentleman from Brazil. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you've
Yes.
talked to Ronaldo.
I
Yes.
did talk to Ronaldo. Oh,
Yeah.
I loved him.
Yeah, yeah.
What a
And I
fun
haven't I
guy.
haven't heard the conversation you had with him, but today at lunch he decided to come up and recount a conversation that he and I had had
Mm.
very early in the race, because he was a very hardcore racing sailor, and he was quite frustrated about what was going on in the boat and sort of the
Mhm.
level of intensity that he was hoping for. And apparently I said to him in a conversation one evening that this is really just a sailing school. This is an ocean racing sailing school where it's our job, and I was saying this to him as the two most experienced sailors other than Mike and Lottie on the boat, that it was our job to help bring everybody else up to a level where we could race at a higher level, where we
Yeah.
could have more confidence in each other and know the right thing to do by instinct and not be needing to be told. And that was our role. That is what Clipper is really about. It's not about the sailing race, just adds some intensity and structure to what is really a high performance ocean racing sailing school for people, a lot of whom have very, very limited previous experience doing anything like this.
Hmm.
So that's the reality of what we were dealing with. And, those are the ways that I tried to, I think, make a difference, is to help people gain confidence, try new things, understand the context that we were operating in, try to support my skipper and my AQP for what they were going through. Because I understood right away that this is not, Mike's been on a winning boat
Yeah.
in this race. He's a racing sailor background, and I understood his role was a very, very challenging one to be able to hold the space for the range of goals that people had and reasons to be on the boat, and to try to create a competitive team all at the same time. And he also had to try to nurture his AQP, who didn't have in Lottie, who didn't have a racing background, and help her grow the confidence to be able to be a leader on the boat as a young lady, 27 years old, right? So, I think there was lots of things I did contribute positively to the boat for sure. Um, but I'm very comfortable walking away from this with a mix of what might have been and what I might have done, being able to do, versus, the amazing personal experience that I had.
I mean, fuck yeah. Right? Like, and I did say that to, I'm like, screw it. This is
Yeah, yeah.
because you can see like what I heard from my son and his friends was really about wanting to console you
Mm,
as a person who has experienced something really hard and challenging and is looking at that, right? And hearing about what you've really done here is it, well, first of all, just being able to sit with that. I think that's such, I take so much inspiration from that. It's all around the world as you've gone all around. It's been so inspiring for me to be able to, you're really present in these conversations, reflecting on not easy, wonderful, fun things, but what's really going on for you. And I think that's so special. So first of all, huge celebrating for that, right? And then and the being able to understand that you can only take people as far as you can take them. And you know what? You can take them like for someone to be saying thank you to you or writing you thank you notes or whatever. Like maybe you didn't have the full impact that you would wish for every single person, but clearly you've helped people move from a place in themselves where they were to a
mm,
place that feels
opening for them, or that inspires them to, and who knows where that'll take them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I do take a great amount of, um, positivity away from that. And it feels like I'm grateful for the feedback, and grateful for the kind words, and grateful to have the relationships with people where, yeah, like they're willing to say things to me that, yeah, very meaningful and very, very honest and personal. That's very rewarding to hear that after, what we've gone through. So
Yeah.
it is a special thing. There's no question. But I do think I think that, I don't know, I just don't think that there's anything wrong with being critically reflective on yourself, even when you are moving in the direction you want to. Doesn't always have to just be, a rosy picture on everything. And I don't say that like with any negativity. It's just a
No.
sense that I'm excited to see if I could, what I'm going to take away from this, whether it's towards sailing or towards other things in life, as a result of seeing that, so much of I think my growth from this year has come from being around different kinds of people than I would normally be around.
Mm.
Different kinds of personalities, right? Different ages, different backgrounds, different cultures, right? And so, uh, seeing that there's lots of room for growth for me because I had this year of experiencing that. That's really exciting. Because I think we talked about this early in the race. It was like one of the first reflections was, oh yeah, I've set up my life very safely with people who are very, nod and smile and love everything that I have to say most of the time. Wouldn't it be nice if the whole world was that way? Well, it's not, right? But we
Hmm.
often design our lives for that to be the case. So this has been a good opportunity to see that there's a lot more learning to go.
Yeah. Well, um, I think there was one last thing that I was thinking of in these reflections, having to do with the different ways that it could be taken when you say, I'm really gutted about what I could or couldn't do to help this team, right? It's not like you were trying to be the sailor all the time who was up on the boat doing the actual sailing. It was the way that the responsibility that you've taken is to understand there are ways I can contribute. What are they?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was, you know, uh, to say that I was gutted that I wasn't able to make more of an impact on our performance. You're right. Like if I had sailed the boat every hour of every watch I was on, or been more hands-on with the key things that make the difference in the performance, steering the boat being one, trimming the sails, there's like a few things, being more involved in the tactics and whatever. Yes, perhaps that creates a better result. But that would have taken away from the experience so many of the other people got to have. And that I clearly knew as we were starting out that my role would go from being the sort of most hands-on person early in the race to probably the least by the end. And that is what happened.
Mm.
Um, and I was fine with that, right? That was part of what we were buying into. And my comment to Ronaldo about it being a sailing school meant, yeah, it was we had people who just joined the race in the last month. And so they signed up to have an experience to go from Washington, D.C. to Portsmouth. And they were still learning and getting the confidence to do new things on the boat. And that went right until the final day. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the big thing is I wish that the way we ran the boat and the way we did what we did, I wish I'd found more ways that doing what we did the way we did had led to better outcomes.
Mm.
And what there was some conversations, I think we talked about it, but there was conversations about whether we should go to a much different model where there was a lot fewer people involved in the key roles like the helming role and the trimming role, more of a racing focus where the other crew would be more passengers. And we just fundamentally, a few of us were just fundamentally said no way. Like, that's not the ethos of our boat.
Yeah.
It's not what we've done all year round. It may be what other boats are doing that are beating us, but we want to finish the race consistent with how we've run the boat, and we did that. So I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the fact that people from all levels of experience before have come out of this with a far greater confidence. I spoke to one gentleman today at lunch who said, I realized after the race that I hold myself back from going beyond a comfort level that my comfort level, and I took away from the race that has really held me back in my life, right? And so,
Wow.
and I thought, wow, man, like, that's a pretty big takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. What are we doing if not that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the impact on the people we'll see the results of that in the years ahead. It wasn't going to show up on the scoreboard in this race, perhaps, but in the years ahead, we'll see what they choose to go on and do with themselves, and the confidence to try things that they don't know if they can do. I think for sure has shifted. So
Yeah.
that feels pretty special.
Mm-hmm. Woohoo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wow, right? Like, ooh, I've got all the feels. Really, really good feels. This is awesome. I want to take a moment to just say I got to talk with Ronaldo and Circumnavigator Mark and folks who just joined from Washington for this last leg. And I made a little playlist in YouTube of those, and I'm going to put the link to that playlist in here. And then the other thing is, if anybody's listening, I am We Turned Out Okay in Instagram, and there are these little clips that I have, so you can click on any of their pictures and hear. And you're in there too, actually, Andrew. And I got to talk with you and Lisa that day.
Indeed.
That was such. Ooh, I love those conversations. And yeah, I think I want to take a moment to celebrate you as a circumnavigator, and then we'll get into the questions that are that have come to us from the Facebook group. So, you did it.
Indeed, I did. Yes, I left here in Portsmouth on September 3rd last year, and came back, right through the same place we left from in July 27th, and 42,000. I don't know if we know exactly how many miles we actually covered as a boat, but it's somewhere around 40 to 42,000 miles. Not the shortest way around the planet, indeed, like definitely a long route with all the diversion from Australia up into the Asian stops, and then through Panama Canal and back up. So it's a bit surreal, to be honest. It was a very strange feeling coming back into Portsmouth and looking at the same sites, and the shorelines full of people and the spectator boats. It literally felt like a week or two had passed since we had been going the other direction. It was a very weird time feeling of, didn't we just do this? Didn't we just leave? Like, what happened in the past week that, how did we get back here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not lost on me that, we covered a tremendous distance going quite slowly in a little sailboat, 70-foot sailboat. And that's a pretty cool thing. And we were all introduced, all the round the worlders from all the boats were celebrated at the prize giving yesterday. And the founder of the race, Robin Knox Johnson, mentioned to the crowd that fewer people have sailed around the world than have climbed Mount Everest. And that was exciting to hear. That's amazing that, we are part of a small community of people who've taken on this big unknown challenge, sailing a sailboat in the middle of, the oceans of the planet and the weather. It's a pretty vulnerable place to be. There's a lot of unknowns. Most of what's happening is unknown, and to go through that, to come out of it healthy and with the boat intact, and still loving sailing personally. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to have done that and to have made it around and to have had just a pretty steady mindset through it all, that I can do this, I can get through this. And yes, there was ups and downs, mostly around the role that I had and whether this was giving me the experience that I had signed up for.
Yeah.
But I don't regret any of it. I grew because of the role that I had, and at the end of the day, on a personal level, I couldn't have been more proud and had a better personal experience of sailing every day for almost a year, to go around the planet, is pretty cool, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. I can feel that. I mean, because you never ever said it's not what you always said was, it's not the sailing. I'm so psyched to be doing this. I get to go sailing every day, every 4 times a day, or however many watches, right, a day. And that is so cool to have been able to keep that even through. I love this too, that you talk about the ups and downs, right? Because some of it even while you were encountering the challenges with the role and growing into the person who could like handle all of the all of the never ever having any privacy and just all the things that you encountered, and that we've talked. You've been so generous with your time all as we've come around this year. There was always a thrilling sound in your, or a thrilled sound in your voice when we spoke of the sailing. Like, hell yeah. You know?
I wanted to share with you. Well, thank you for that. And I just wanted to share. There was one thing that somebody said. Somebody wrote to me. So, pardon me as I pull up my phone here.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of builds off of what we're talking about here. That it was interesting to hear it from somebody who was observing me through at least half the race. The way that they phrased it was, the quiet pleasure you take in so many moments of ocean racing has been infectious. I hope you continue to prioritize spending more time at sea. From my perspective, this clearly brings you a lot of satisfaction. And I think that's, for me, this was always going to be sort of two different experiences happening at the same time. It was going to be getting to go sailing every day and the pleasures of that in an environment that I haven't had the experience of before, of sort of the vast oceans and the big weather, and the whales and the dolphins and the albatross and all of what comes with that. To be able to really enjoy that, I was curious if I would still love sailing every day, but my mindset was going to be that I was going to enjoy being able to do it every day and not to take that for granted. And it's interesting. I've had a number of people say comments similar to that one of the things they really helped them was to shift their mindset, was that they could see the joy that I was having, just like staring out at the waves or the wildlife, or the weather conditions, whether it was light wind and having to really focus in on every little whisper of wind that was around it, standing up at the front of the boat, looking for little signs of if there was wind nearby, like that was just natural for me. But it's still, I don't take for granted that I sustained that for a year, and including being around other people who weren't always in the same mindset and weren't necessarily having the same joy of experience.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear that there was some infectious nature to that others were able to take away. So
yeah. When you said, I'm gonna see if I can do it, was that a part of it, or what was in your mind when you were saying, I don't know if I can do this yet, I'm going to see if I can do it?
Yeah, I remember that it was funny. I was just watching that video a few minutes before we came on. That was last July. I was in Chicago, and I was with a group of inner city kids in Chicago, and the people running the event from One Solution sort of introduced what I was about to go off and do. And, the group was just sort of incredulous to what that might even be like. And one of the questions from one of the youth in the program was like, how do you know you can do that? And I think it was just a fascinating question, because it just sort of, to me, it was exactly the question that so many of us face, that controls the pace of growth in our life, is the need to know with certainty of what we're capable of.
Yes.
So yeah, I suppose that part of the curiosity was, yes, like, can I love sailing every day, 12 hours a day, love being on the boat 24 hours a day, but love actually being active on the sailing every day for a year, crossing oceans with people I don't know, racing every day, all of it. Absolutely, that was part of it. It wasn't just, can I handle the weather? Can I handle, the sea? Can I stay, healthy enough? Can I stay, not get injured? All of it was unknown, to be honest, because I'd never done it before. So
yeah,
even in the training, and this definitely wasn't something that we observed. The training, the longest we were at sea was, I think, 3 days straight. And the first race was 3 times that. The next race was, 28
uncountable
days,
times.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Uncountable
Whatever,
times.
9 times.
However that is, exactly.
My math brain has turned off. But yeah, of course, all of it was unknown because I'd never done it before. And so reflecting on the fact that, yes, check, I showed up every watch. And I literally think every watch that I came up on deck, I had that thought of, cool, I get to go sailing today. And I said it to the crew probably more than half the time. Said it to people on the crew who were maybe struggling or needed just to be reminded, say, hey, we get to go sailing, for 4 hours, or we get to go sailing for 6 hours, even if it's like all hell's breaking loose up above. We get to go and do this. And maybe that made a difference for people. I don't know, but for me, it really helped me keep a mindset and a perspective on of sort of the gratitude for the opportunity to do this, and to see if I could sustain it for a whole year. And apparently I could.
Apparently
so that's exciting.
Yeah, hooray. That is. Yeah. Ooh, okay. Just for time purposes, I'm gonna not keep going, but just know just how awesome this is so cool to be celebrating this in this moment with you after all the work that you've done and all the challenges and all the fun. Here we are.
Here
You
we
did
are.
it.
Yeah.